I want you to be aware that there are several things that new construction home builders do not care about when it comes to your new home contract. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How's it going, everybody? Catherine Newman here. I'm a local real estate agent here in the Manatee and Sarasota County markets and the counties beyond, and specifically in my hometown of Parrish, Florida. And I am here to just share with you some information that's going to help you in your decision process if you're thinking about coming down to these here parts and finding you a new construction home.
My husband and I have never been more active.
Shingles doesn't care.
I go to spin classes with my coworkers.
Good for you. Shingles doesn't care.
So you might be wondering, what does a shingles commercial have to do with what's in a builder's new home construction contract? Well, absolutely nothing. But I think that commercial is funny because it's basically telling you, you might have an idea of something you're going to go do, like in the commercial, right? I'm going to go play pickleball. Shingles doesn't care. I'm at the best part of my life. My career is growing great. Shingles doesn't care. Well, in the same way, it always makes me think about the many conversations that I have with you guys when you're coming down here. Is there's so many things that builders doesn't care. And I know that's not grammatically correct, but that's what we're going to call today. Builders doesn't care. And I want to share with you the thing that builders doesn't care about when it comes to your contract with them. And I want you to be aware of it so you're not shocked. And of course, this is not an expansive list of all the things you need to know about a new construction builder's contract, which I say all the time are very seller friendly. There are some things that you need to know when you're coming down here and you're looking at new construction homes, because there are certain points of the new construction contract that you need to be aware of because they affect you in many ways. And when I speak with a lot of you on the phone, these are things, of course, you don't know. You don't know what the builder contracts are like down here, or maybe you've never bought a new construction home, or maybe it's been a few years since you bought a new construction home and things have changed. So I want to make sure I go over these with you so that you're aware if coming down here and looking at some of these homes, or maybe you're looking at a new construction home wherever you live in the USA, and you just want to know and be aware of builder contracts. Number one, being pre-qualified or what we call pre-approved for a loan, or if you're paying cash, having a proof of funds. So let's talk about pre-qualification, pre-approval. These days, pre-qualification doesn't really mean much. Pre-approval is a stronger stance on where you are in your credit and your financial situation and how likely it is for you to be able to get a mortgage. So a lot of you come down here and you have a pre-qualification letter or maybe a pre-approval letter from your lending institution wherever you live in these here United States or even from other countries. And I'm going to tell you right now, builders doesn't care. They want you to be pre-approved, pre-qualified, whatever you want to call it, with their preferred lender. So that catches some of you off guard sometimes because you just want to be able to slap that letter. They're not going to do it that way. They have a process, and it's a very streamlined process. And this is pretty true with most builders, whether it's entry-level building or high-end custom building. They want you to speak to their preferred lender first to make sure that all of your ducks are in a row financially and that you qualify to even put a contract on that house. As a matter of fact, you have to go through and get some sort of qualification from their preferred lender if they're even going to put a contract together for you on a specific property. But that's just the way it is. They typically will give you a link to one of their preferred lenders. Some of them are in-house lenders. Sometimes they have some builders here will have lenders that they use that are credit unions or just local lenders or something like that. But for the most part, a lot of them have their own in-house lending. And they're going to give you a link and you're going to supply some documents. You're going to get a phone call from someone, even on a weekend, and you can talk with someone and they're going to get a feel for whether or not you can move forward with maybe putting an offer or contract on, whether it's an inventory home or maybe it's even a new start home where you're just going to buy the lot and have a particular floor plan built on it. So that is the first process for pre-qualifying or pre-approval. It's great if you come down here and have a letter from your lender for a resale home. That's important. But if you're looking at new construction, they're still going to have you go through their preferred lender. What about those of you that are not getting a mortgage? You're going to be paying cash. Well, they're going to require you to have some sort of proof of funds. POF is what we call it. And that's kind of easy to get. A lot of people maybe have a letter on letterhead, business letterhead from their financial planner. Sometimes people have on the financial institution letterhead something from their lending institution, the bank that they use wherever they live. And sometimes I've had people just go right, a lot of us do online banking, they just go into online banking and they print out something showing the balance that they have to buy that house, whether it's maybe in a stock or it's already sitting in the bank somewhere or whatever. You're proving that you have those funds. And I always tell people, just black out your actual account number as long as it has your name on it and the institution where the money is being held. That is typically okay for a proof of funds. Number two, and this is a biggie. What if you have to sell and close on a home where you live now before you can buy the home and close on it here? Builders doesn't care. Hate to tell you that, but there are some builders here that will not even accept a contingent to sell contract. There are some that will maybe give you 30 days to get your home sold. Now, there are some builders that will do maybe a 60-day or a 90-day. They might give, and sometimes they'll do a 60-day and then let you go another 30 days. But it is all going to depend and be at the discretion of what the builder is going through at the moment. And what I mean by that is, let's say that we go into a community that's got 4 or 5 different inventory homes that are what they call quick move-in homes, and they're ready to roll. Even if they're not ready in 30 days, maybe they're ready in 60 days. Well, a builder is going to be less likely to take a contingent to sell contract on those properties because they need to get those properties off the books. So that is something to think about. Now, if you're coming down here and you want to pick out a lot and a certain floor plan and you're going to start from scratch, you're thinking, well, wait a minute. Those builders usually take, 9 to 12 months to build a house, which is true. Some inventory builders are less. Sometimes those are 7 to 8 months. But for the most part, it's going to take a good amount of time to build that house. And you're thinking, well, what does it matter? I'll for sure have my house sold by then. But guys, you do not want to get stuck with not having a contingency if your home up, say in, Long Island or Pennsylvania or Ohio or somewhere, Colorado, that home doesn't sell. You're still on the hook for this new home. So I think that it's important for you to understand the contingent to sell rules here when it applies to individual builders. I will also say that there are a few builders that have longer term, like they might give you 6 months to sell your home in a contingent contract, but it's also based on the fact that you put a deposit down. On any of these, you're going to put a deposit down. We'll talk about that in a second. You're going to put a deposit down, but you have a home to sell. I do know, like Coulter Homes, for example, and I've sold already some great homes near now here in Parrish in the Woodland Preserve. Beautiful neighborhood. Make sure you watch this video here about Woodland Preserve. But they offer a pretty generous contingent to sell. 6 months. I don't have all of the exacts on it right here in this video, but about 6 months to sell. But if someone else were to come along and say, oh, you got to hold, I see you have a contingent buyer on lot, 22, but boy, we got cashola right now. We can buy that house now. Well, then the builder's going to go back to the person that has the contingent to sell contract going on that lot and say, hey, we have somebody that's interested. Can you remove your contingency within whatever hours they have, 36 hours, 72 hours, whatever the contract stipulates. And then that buyer can be moved to another, let's say that they can't, right? They can't remove that contingency yet. because they still need to sell their home and hadn't sold or whatever. So they're able to move those to maybe another lot. And then that other person could come in and take that pretty lot that you wanted to begin with. So, there are some variations there. So just be aware of the fact that if you have a home to sell, if they give you an opportunity to do a contingent contract, it's not going to be for very long. You're still going to put a deposit down on the house. And of course, you have to have a deposit down on a house to have a valid contract. But you're going to have to know which builders offer you how much time. So how do you time that to really help yourself? And that's a tough question, people, because a lot of you are still working where you are. A lot of you still have kids in school. You have events coming up. You've got vacations. There's a lot of stuff to consider. I think the easiest thing for most people is to go ahead and get your home on the market where you live. And then if it goes under contract and you get past that important inspection stuff, you're past that. It looks like things are headed towards closing. Then come down here and search for a house, unless you are able to purchase a house here without having the funds from that house, right? Or you're pretty certain that you don't need a contingency contract here. I have buyers that do that as well. So it all depends on where you live and what you're comfortable with if you want to do a contingent contract. But just be aware that it's just harder to have a contingent to sell contract here in Florida, because even though our market's a little bit slower, builders have inventory homes they want to get off their books. And if they're starting from dirt with your house, even though it might take 9 to 12 months to build it, they really just don't want to tie up their capital to start building you a house that you're not going to be able to buy if your home doesn't sell. Number 3, you want the incentives that the builder is offering, but you'll want to use your own lender. Builders doesn't care. Sorry, guys, but that's the way it works. If you want the builder incentives, and what I mean by that is, sometimes they're offering a discounted, maybe a lower interest rate. Sometimes they're offering closing cost incentives, or maybe a design center incentive. Sometimes they just give you flex cash, and you can decide how you want to allot it towards your purchase and your closing. If you want to use those incentives that the builders are offering, then you have to use an approved lender or the in-house lender for the builder. So what happens if you're in the middle of getting loan qualification, you're working on your loan while they're building your house or they're finishing a house for you? What happens if you find another lender that's seems to have better rates and lower closing costs because you've been shopping it, and you have what the lender from the builder is providing you, and you have another lender that you're comparing? And I have buyers that do this. They like to compare to the very end, and that's okay. But if you switch lenders midstream, many contracts are already going to tell you what happens. You could lose that incentive money. Again, we just talked about that. The other thing is you probably have a certain amount of days within the contract that you could find another lender, and then you have to give so many days notice. And I want to read something to you so that you can kind of just, get an idea for what I'm saying. And I'm not blowing smoke, where. So anyway, let me just kind of tell you this. This is actually a Lennar contract, nationwide company. Once buyer selects a lender and obtains a commitment acceptable to the seller, buyer may change to another lender at buyer's discretion up to 30 days prior to closing, provided the buyer notifies seller in writing of such a change and, listen to this, and provides another commitment letter. So if you're just shopping it and you're like, hey, this guy over at ABC Lending has way better than what you, Mr. Builder's lender, is showing me, you better have a commitment from that person already saying, yes, we will do this loan for you. That's probably rare because they need to do their due diligence too and take the time to get all your information and see if you qualify for the loan that they are telling you all these great rates and stuff to. And that's just Lennar, right? So other builders are going to have their own, timelines and stuff, but just be aware of that once you're locked in with a builder's lender, then and you want to switch it, we have to go back to the contract for that specific builder and decide, are you within your right and your timing to do so? Number 4, let's say that you want to have your attorney look over the contract before you do anything. You have a total right to do that. However, if your attorney says to you, hey, I don't like section whatever, have them take that out, or let's line through this, or this is weird, let's make sure we X through that. Builders doesn't care. Builder is not going to allow you to take anything out of the contract. Never really seen that happen. And I want to give you kind of an example that I do hear sometimes when people have their lawyers or their attorneys, look, I guess they're the same, lawyers and attorneys, but you know what I mean. Look at a contract here, especially with attorneys, lawyers that aren't used to maybe a Florida contract. So example, most, if not all, I don't think I've ever seen one that doesn't have this. Builder contracts have a stipulation in the contract that says, and I'm going to read one contract to you here. The seller agrees that the seller agrees that the home will be ready for occupancy for the buyer within 2 years after the date of the final addendum signed by the seller. Every contract basically gives the builder 2 years, up to 2 years, to build your house. Now, have I ever seen it take 2 years for a builder to complete a house? I haven't, and I've been in this business 28 years. I'm not saying that hasn't happened to maybe some of you that had a custom built home with a builder. You hear that all the time. But with most of these kinds of builders that we have around here, they're still going to put 2 years in their contract, but I've never seen it take 2 years. Now, the closest we've gotten to that, and when, was during COVID. During the pandemic, it was taking longer for builders to complete homes because we had supply chain shortages, we had worker shortages, people were getting sick and it wasn't a good time, it was just a bad thing. However, even during COVID, the latest I saw, the longest it took for someone to complete a house, a new construction house, was maybe 16 to 18 months. Again, that's just my experience with it. But you have to be aware that if your attorney looks at a builder's contract and says, oh, I'd have them take that out right now, they're not going to take it out. So just know, if you want to pay your attorney to look at it, I think it's a good idea. If it gives you a good feeling to know that maybe it isn't a contract that you want to sign, then that makes sense. But the builder is not going to strike anything out or change their contract, their boilerplate contract, even though some things in the contract won't always apply to every buyer either. But they're not going to change things. So just be aware of that. So number 5 has to do with design appointments, structural appointments, selection appointments, pool appointments, that sort of thing. And of course, there are several builders here where you get what you get. You're not going to pick out any design stuff. And then there are other builders that when we're meeting with them together to put your contract together on whatever house you're buying, and let's say it's dirt start, you get to pick out your lot maybe, and then you can tell them, hey, out of these 5 choices that you've given me, Mr. Builder, we're going to choose color choice and scheme number 3. So maybe you have a little bit of choice there, but this is for those of you who are buying a home where the builder does have a design center and they do expect you to be at these design appointments. Now, I'm not saying that I haven't had to be at some design appointments for my buyers before, because I have, but for the most part, they really want you to be there so they can explain the process. You get to see all of the selections that they offer, and then you spend time with their designer. I would say most appointments are about 5 hours long, and each builder is going to have their own process. Some have more appointments, some have less. If you're not getting a pool, for example, then you wouldn't need to have a pool appointment. So that's or maybe the builder doesn't even offer a pool. That's kind of true of a lot of builders here too. So if you are buying a home where there's a design center, there's going to be these appointments along the way. And what's difficult, I know, for most of you is you live somewhere else. So you're not always able to keep flying down here. It's not convenient for you. The timing is off. You've got kids. Maybe you're still working. You have to buy a plane ticket or you have to drive down here every time. It is very inconvenient. However, builders doesn't care. They want you at these appointments. No, they don't like to do them online because you can't really see what they have. It's a lot more work for them. So just be aware of that. If you're going to go to a Del Webb or you're going to go to, a Taylor Morrison or a Neal or a Coulter or even a Manatee or Medallion Homes, and you want to pick out your finishes and that sort of thing, really need to have in mind that they're going to request you to be at these appointments. Now, about these appointments, sometimes they can schedule a few as, back to back as they can. And sometimes they have to space these appointments out. And you're like, why can't I do it the same week I'm down there visiting and put something under contract? Well, because if you're getting custom design, they need time to take your contract and all of the structural features that you've picked out with the salesperson and your personal real estate agent. They're going to take all of that and actually put it on a floor plan for your particular house that you want built. So let's say instead of a 2-car garage, you want a 3-car garage. And you do want to add a pool. And maybe you want to add a bonus room. Well, those are all things you're going to do at the point of contract with the sales agent, at the builder, and your real estate agent. And then they take all of that information and send it to the engineers to come up with a floor plan. And then they send that to the designers. And then the designers, when they're ready to sit with you, they know exactly all of the specifications that you've picked out that are structural changes. That's why you can't always get it done the same week you're down there putting a contract on. If you want a more custom home, you're going to have to plan those times to be down here to meet with the design center. And yes, if you fail to make appointments and pick out your stuff in a timely manner so that the builder can start working on permitting and getting all of the interior finishes that you want ordered for your house, and you're not here to do it, you can be found in default. Don't believe me? I'm going to read it to you, okay? So here's one. I'm going to read it to you. In the event, what they call these, so these are called critical dates and events, these appointments that we're talking about. In the event critical dates and events are caused by the buyer resulting in any delays whatsoever, seller shall have the option in its sole discretion to, 1, declare the buyer in default and pursue any remedies against the buyer that are available to seller under Florida law. They're going to come after you. No, they're going to take your earnest money is what they're going to do. And of course, there's a few other things in here that the seller in its sole discretion can do. So you have to be aware of that. So if you're doing any kind of custom design, people, you got to be here for your appointments. It's very important, and it's really kind of fun. You're going to be happy that you did. Thing to know number 6. What if you've been quoted a timeline for when your house should be done, say within 9 to 11 months, and what if the builder is done in month 7.5? But you've already told that salesperson and your real estate agent and everybody else at that builder, hey, we are taking a family vacation to Wally World.
First one's here.
At 7.5 months. So are you sure that we're good and the house won't be done for 9 to 11 months? And they're like, that's what we're being told. So that's where we're tracking right now. But I'm going to tell you, sometimes builders are done sooner, and sometimes builders are done later than the window of time that they give you. If that messes up your schedule, Builders doesn't care. They don't care. And that's very frustrating for a lot of us because I have seen them finish sooner and I have seen them finish later. You have to be flexible, and the builder is always going to say, hey, we're ahead of things. We got done sooner and now we're ready to close. They're not going to sit there with that house for 2 more months because they gave you a window, and you are going to sign something to that effect that is in the contract. On the flip side, sometimes it takes longer than the window that they've given you. There have been delays. I mean, think about the things that happen in Florida. For example, summer is our rainy season. Sometimes it's rain and rain. This past season, rain, and they couldn't get shingles on the roofs because it was so rainy. Or maybe they couldn't pour concrete and let it dry and cure because it was so rainy. So those things happen. And let's not forget about all the fun weather events we have right up in here in Florida that also delay many things, especially like 2024 when we had back-to-back crap happening here. So you just have to be aware of that because builders don't care if their time to close doesn't fit your timeline. And number 7 kind of goes hand in hand with number 6 about the builders not really caring about whether it fits your timeline when the home gets completed are 2 critical things. There's a plane flying overhead. 2 critical things that happen towards the end when your home is closer to being done. You are going to hear from the builder's customer care processing center, and they're going to say, congratulations, Mr. and Ms. Buyer. We have scheduled your new home orientation walk and your closing date. And a lot of times I get this feedback from my buyer going, there's no way we can make that date like the new home walk, or there's no way we can make the closing date. We're so-and-so, we're both working. Now they do give you notice. They typically have in their contract that you will find out 30 days prior. And again, I always make sure you understand it can come at any time, right? Kind of like shingles, right? It can come anytime. But once you get that email from the customer care person for that builder telling you your new home orientation walk date and your closing date, you need to make sure you can make those appointments. Now, I will say that there are times that some builders have been a little more lenient if you call and you say, hey, this specific date, could you move it a day ahead or a day back? They might be able to accommodate that if you get in touch with them quickly, but for the most part, they're not going to, because your house is not the only house they're building. They've got 25 or more houses that they're building, and they've got them all in a very tight construction schedule and closing schedule and inspections schedule for the county. So everything, they can't have you backing up their system. You know what happens when you get clogged up? Then you need some Metamucil. Yeah, you need some of that stuff. So my point is, when you get that information of when your new home orientation walk is, you need to be prepared that you've got to be here for that. Now, I will say, I have done many new home walks, and let me explain what a new home orientation walk is. A new home orientation walk is when you meet with a construction supervisor that is the one that actually oversaw the building of your home, and he or she is going to go through all of the components that put that house together. They're going to show you how the HVAC works, how the sprinkler system works. They're going to show you things outside where the main shutoffs are for gas, or how to work this and that and the other, right? How to work all the house out. And then they're going to show you certain aspects. These are how the windows go up and down. This is what you do here. This is how you set the thermostat. So they're going to introduce you to all of the components of your home. And at that walk, we also walk around, you the buyer. I always try to make all of my new home orientation walks, unless they've planned it at the last minute and I can't get there. Hate it when they do that. But anyway, it does happen. But we're going to walk that property and we're going to pick things out on the outside, like that stucco looks weird, or that board looks like it hasn't been painted, or that window has a scratch in it, or we're going to go inside and we're going to put little blue tape. We're just going to walk through that house and give them a punch list of things that they need to continue to finish or make look better, right? That's just part of the process. Sometimes I've walked through these new home orientations and it doesn't look like we should be walking that house at all. It is far from being done. Other times I've walked through and it's pretty ready to go. And yes, they are able to get trades in there and get that stuff done. So that's the way it's going to work. For those of you that cannot be down here, they will allow your agent, if you have an agent that you're working with, to walk that property for you. I personally, they're not going to allow us to sign off on anything. You have to sign off on it, but they can do that electronically. I just did it last week. But that's something to keep in mind. And then typically 1 to 2 weeks later, now it seems like they're trying to do it within a week span. You have your new home orientation walk, and a week later, you're going to have your closing date. You have a final walkthrough either the evening before or the morning of closing. And you walk through just to make sure that all the little things you wanted them to take care of are taken care of. And anything that's still on an outstanding punch list, typically in the contract that you sign, the builder has about 30 days to come back in and finish those things up. They won't all be finished sometimes before you close on that house, and you can't stop the closing because those things aren't done. So that's what the contract is going to stipulate. So that's something you need to know. And then you can go to closing. So just be aware that these dates and deadlines are very important to the builder. All of the contracts are very builder friendly. And so you just need to have your ducks in a row and make sure you're working with an agent that is on top of that, that understands the new construction timelines, that works with these builders, and knows who to talk to get answers and that sort of thing. It's really important. And that's not just true of here in Manatee and Sarasota counties. That's just true of wherever you are in the United States, is that you're working with an agent that has your back. So make sure you're doing that. That's why I like to give TMI to my buyers, because I want them to be equipped and ready to roll when we get going on a new construction process. So if there's been anything helpful in this, I'd love to hear your comments. I hope you will comment below. And I would love for you to subscribe to this YouTube channel where I share information like this. It gives you answers to your questions and, of course, explains all of the markets around here in the Manatee and Sarasota areas and the counties beyond. Because I think it's important for you to have as much information as you can so you can make an informed decision for yourself and your family. I'm Catherine Newman. I will see you next week.